SABC News Political Editor Mzwandile Mbeje is joining us now in studio for more. Mzwai, we're just going to start there, right there with the politics. How much of politics were at play to where we find ourselves today?
Yeah, in fact, well, a very good evening to you, but the politics played out immediately after the postponement. I mean, we had the political parties claiming they were the ones which were responsible for the postponement. Of course, that is being contested by a number of other political parties. I guess, given what was the contentious issue, so clearly parties would want to be seen as the ones who actually were, in inverted commas, the voice of reason. So there was lots and lots of politics. But of course, we are in the uncharted territory. So we haven't been subjected to this kind of situation. In other countries, I mean, there would be what you call a government shutdown. It may not necessarily be exactly the same, but of course it's got all those elements because with this GNU, where there's no one party that is just deciding, so things like this are bound to happen. So when it happened and then people said, so we want to see how it will work, we actually meant exactly things like this.
And I suppose, Mzwai, it also speaks to, two questions there. The first one, the DA speaking to the spokesperson earlier on, she says that for them, they led the charge, I'm quoting, they led the charge and the other parties followed suit. But then she goes and she says the other parties in the GNU are backing vocalists of the ANC. They're just backing whatever the ANC is saying. But as the Democratic Alliance, they see this as a victory for the people of South Africa. Then you listen to what the Good Party said in Parliament. All of us agreed to a postponement. Then you listen to the Patriotic Alliance. No, it's not just the DA. All of us agreed to this postponement. What does this do to the cohesion within the Government of National Unity? Well,
given that obviously you have different parties which are competing for space and prominence and relevance, so you are bound to have this. I wouldn't say it means this disagreement means perhaps the collapse. Whether it starts to build certain elements, that's another issue altogether. So what is basically happening is that you have different parties, different entities, which have really different views in terms of how to move forward. I mean, when you look about, when you talk about the DA saying they are the ones who led this, I mean, it's actually, I find it actually more interesting that a minister of an opposition party would actually say, no, it is actually the ANC that did that. And I think I was hearing the Minister Nchaven as well saying, in terms of the sitting arrangements, even in cabinet, so and how you start to speak, so it's to do with seniority. So the ANC ministers are likely to have been the ones who actually were opposed to this. So yes, political parties will want to mind this. It's in their interest. It's understandable. But of course, even within the ANC, so there are people who will be opposed to what has been happening. So I guess a lot of going back to the drawing board is necessary in this regard.
And Mzwai, you speak about other countries, which is the big question now, because a lot of people are saying, how do the other countries resolve their sticking points? You speak about the government shutdown and all of that, but one would then say, a South African viewing this moment, how should they respond to it? Is it a victory for the people of South Africa to say democracy is actually in action, or others who are saying, but it does look like things are possibly at crisis level?
Well, I wouldn't really characterize it as crisis level, but of course you have said something very interesting. So we chose to be a democratic state, so we are being governed by democratic prescripts. So that's exactly what democracy produces. Sometimes we may like what it produces, sometimes we may not like. So, but what exactly is happening now is democracy at play. I mean, you don't see people fighting. We're just fighting about ideas. And then we already know when this is going to happen, because a democratic process led to this kind of conclusion. Parties didn't agree, but somehow they understood that the only way to resolve this matter is through dialogue, is to sit down, is to find each other. And you had the political parties saying it was agreed in cabinet. Of course, those who are outside, so we're very unhappy about this. So the issue, which is actually a sticking point, which is the 2% increase in VAT, so that was going to be a huge issue. And it's understandable why parties would want to claim it.
And especially when you think about the fact that there are some who are saying these are growing pains. It was a necessary pain that you get to see the government of national unity in action, to see the diversity of the voices. Now, Mzwai, I suppose then it leads to the next question to say, we've seen the NHI Act, we've seen the Expropriation Act, we've seen the Bella Act. How much of this, especially when you read the statement by the Democratic Alliance, it speaks about its muscle and how it's being felt. How much of this for them was about that, to say possibly to their supporters, we have not been drowned out. In fact, we are still as much present with everything we would have said in the lead up to the election last year?
You know, I really wouldn't want Bongwe to single out one party. Obviously, the Democratic Alliance is the major partner in the GNU, especially because we got the opportunity to listen to other parties which are part of the GNU, which were as vocal about this issue. So, but because we're in the political space where you are able to mine and capitalize on what you see is going wrong and then will benefit you, you definitely will do that. And I think the DA is using this very cleverly to say the fact that it's not happened, so we have had, and it's possibly true that they played this role, but where I do not want to single them out alone, because there are voices which are saying the ANC ministers, some of the senior ministers, were actually the first to say, no, we do not agree with this. Yes, the DA, I mean, it's possible that you would have parties that don't necessarily agree and agreeing on something. If the budget, let's say, went ahead and was tabled, you were going to see a party like DA or reject it, a party like MK and EFF reject it. So they are not necessarily of the same view in terms of how the country must move forward. But on this issue, they are united. So that's why I'm saying, yes, the parties will definitely use this opportunity to obviously elevate their status and their weight. But it does appear that perhaps the minister should have consulted a bit more.
And we must never forget, local government elections are just on the horizon. So a lot is at play here. And as you say, Mzwai, we've heard from a number of these political parties in Parliament who have actually been saying that for them, this was also a sticking point behind closed doors. So quite a lot to talk about. And one is keen then to hear more from them as to what exactly happened. But thank you so much to Mzwandile Mbeje, they are politics editor, just making sense of the developments today.